Hey YouTube, Bearded Bristol back with something guaranteed to keep you up at night, which is what we all want in the end, right? Now, in all seriousness, grab your life jacket and your paddle because we're going to take a little trip down the stream of consciousness. That's right. Something that is just somewhat random. I've put a little bit of thought into this, but we're just going to see where the hell it goes. I am sitting out this evening in a light shower. I'm under the covering of my patio, but my legs are getting wet this very moment, so we'll see how long this goes. If the wind starts shifting, the video will shift to the indoors. That said, I'm enjoying little 10 Russians in a Morgan Bones nice little sitter here. This is great. I have never had bad luck with a Morgan Bones pipe. They're just fantastic. But that said, also have my scotch because I couldn't do a video without some scotch. But this evening, instead of the standard Clan MacGregor, we have a little bit of 12-year-old Aberlour, which is a nice 12-year-old Highland. Goes well with the 10 Russians I have discovered. There's just enough smokiness in the scotch to pair well with the pipe. So that said, I've done a video before on responsibility and taking responsibility even when it isn't your own fault. And I have made a career of that, in fact. I've done very well taking responsibility for stuff I didn't screw up. But that said, I've noticed something in recent months that has changed my perspective a little bit. I still take responsibility for my actions and the actions of others, even when it's not really my problem. But I wasn't really, when I say I was taking responsibility, I wasn't taking responsibility inside. I wasn't truly taking that to heart. And, I have no problems going in front of a boss or a power structure and saying, hey, yes, I could have changed the outcome, I will own that, and whatever. And the people I was speaking to appreciated that, but I myself wasn't owning that. And why do I say that? Well, over the last, let's say, 6 months, I have been on a tremendous win streak. I'm not rich and famous, obviously. My income has not changed. But I have discovered a different dynamic, a different level of happiness, than I had previously known. The last 10 to 12 years, again, this has been in previous videos to a degree or another, I've just kind of been a floater. I was a fatalist to a degree, I was a pessimist to a large degree, until I started doing YouTube videos, basically. And some of that is due to friendships that I had, drawing from their experience, there being other pessimists. And I found myself aligning with that attitude. And with that came the resulting, it doesn't matter what I do, life is going to do what it wants to. You can't influence the outcome. It's going to outcome the way it wants to, whether you income or not. Income, outcome. I suppose that makes sense. We're going to go with it anyway. But it wasn't until, again, if you go back and reference my first video, where I started talking about taking the last shot. It wasn't until roughly that point where I started really taking responsibility for my own actions in those moments that matter. And saying, you know what, I'm going to take the extra step, I'm going to do this, I'm going to that. And because of that, my attitude has changed. I'm no longer a pessimist, I'm an optimist. Like, to a ridiculous extent. And I love that about me now. I look back at the pessimistic me, and that was never me, but it fit where I was in the world at that time. So again, I said this is stream of consciousness, right? So just float along and try to deal with it. That said, when I started to come to grips with the fact that I didn't have money, I didn't have goals, I didn't have a direction, I was just floating along the river of life. Once I started to make goals, once I started to really truly internalize the fact that where I was a result of my own actions, and nobody else's fault. That's where things started to change. And this is fascinating to me. I've long been a study of human nature, but never really looked in the mirror at my own human nature. Okay, so here I go again. I talk too long, the pipe goes out, we've all been there. But I was not really taking responsibility for my own status in life. I was willing to take responsibility for my mistakes and other people's mistakes, but when it came to why was I barely able to pay the bills? Why was I unhappy? It was always somebody else's fault. And again, once I started retrospectively looking at myself and my decisions, I realized I was where I was because of the decisions I made, not because of fate, not because the world's going to be what it is, whether I want it to be that way or not. And so I took a unique opportunity, a part-time job in the metro, and it's worked out. It's not ultimately where I want to be, but it's a good step in the right direction. There are some other small adjustments I made along the way, but what I realized is that once I really understood that I was where I was because of my own decisions and not because the world hated me or because somebody else put me in this place, is when life got a lot easier. Because it's a lot easier to be happy than it is to be sad or depressed or whatever. When you wake up and take a deep breath and realize that you are alive and you have something to contribute to the world is a great first step. I went through that period where you wake up in the morning and, I gotta go to work, and I gotta this, and then there's this. And I still have those days, don't misunderstand. But it was hard work being unhappy and depressed every day. It's a lot easier waking up and realizing that I have value. And it's somewhat literally the flip of a switch. It's an internal decision I personally had to make for myself. But once I made that decision, I was happy. We'll just leave it at that. What I didn't realize, and now I can look back a year or so later and say, oh my goodness, how my life has changed for the better. I'm not any richer, but I sure as hell am happier. And I am not a clinically depressed person. I've never been diagnosed with that, but I went through a pretty, we'll just call it dark period. Never on the verge of suicide, anything like that, but just in a place where I felt like the world was against me. And when I made the conscious decision to take true responsibility for my actions, that all started to change. And it's the craziest thing because I never, a year ago, could have predicted the outcome from that. So when I say my world has changed, what do I mean? Well, I have accidentally lost 25 pounds. Okay, not accidentally. I work out and I enjoy it. But again, in my early videos, you've heard me complain about my joints. I have joints that are 20 years older than I am. Hey, life happens. So what did I do? I found exercises that I could do that did not distress my joints to the degree. You know, I used to love to play basketball. And volleyball. True up and down, physically wear your ass out exercise. I love that, and I miss the hell out of it. I can't do it anymore. Physically cannot do it anymore. So I found some other exercises that I could do. I do low impact weightlifting. I walk. And what I've realized is how much I missed that physicality. And so at least once a week, if not twice, I get out and do stuff. And I work up a sweat, and I love every second of it. And I know exercise isn't for everybody, but you ought to try it. It's good for the heart, it's good for the soul. But through that period, I've lost 25 pounds. I feel fit. I wake up and I don't ache. It doesn't hurt me to get out of bed anymore. And all because of that simple decision to find other ways to manifest the love I used to have for just sweating my ass off. And so that's been good, obviously, clearly. But what I also noticed is as I started to get more fit, I wanted to change my eating habits. I mean, I am the fast food guru, or at least I used to be. I could tell you what specials at what fast food restaurant, and damn. And I still love a good old gray meat fatty burger every now and then. But every now and then is now once a week instead of, I don't know, 6 times a week, 8 times a week. But beyond that, even from a work standpoint, nobody loves their job. And if you do, I want you to go see a doctor because you're someplace else. But no, God bless you if you do love your job. I wish I did. I like my job. I hate the commute, but I like my job. But even with that, once I realized that I was responsible for my own future, it wasn't somebody else's fault I was where I was. It wasn't somebody else's fault my business failed or wasn't as profitable as it could have been. I'll just put it that way. We'll leave it there. All of a sudden, working wasn't so bad. You know, working has a purpose. You're providing a product, a value, a service to your employer or to your clients in return for money. Voluntary exchange of goods and services, as it were. I've gotten over the notion that I'm not being compensated enough for the work I do, because I also realize that I have spent the last 10, 15 years not living up to my own expectations. So how can I expect an employer to reward me accordingly? You know, I still think I should be earning 6 digits, but, you know, who among us doesn't? You know, it's that self-realization that I have erected my own hurdles, and some of them I've cleared, some of them I've tripped over, but by and large, I've not lived up to my own expectations. So how can I expect an employer to reward me accordingly? So anyway, we've traveled a little ways down the stream. I'm going to cut this off shortly. I guess ultimately my point in all of this evening, as I try to keep my pipe lit. Now it is raining in on me if you can't see that on camera. I have set my own goals now. I have taken responsibility for me achieving or failing to achieve those goals. And from that standpoint, I am a happier person because I now have a purpose. If you are one of those people like I was, like I used to be, not even 2 years ago, who was expecting these things to find us somewhat unwittingly, like it's just going to happen because we're good people or because we feel like we're working hard enough. It's time to change that attitude. The only way to get to where you want to go is by taking the wheel and driving. And I'm happy to say, well, while my car may be shitty and have too many miles on it, and I mean my actual physical car, this is not metaphoric. My actual car is a POS. But I will not get rid of that car until it gives up on me. Because for the first time in many, many years, I am taking the wheel and driving it myself. That is metaphoric, by the way. Oh, silly rain, getting in my pipe and pissing me off. So, my advice to all of you, take the wheel and drive. But pick out a destination. Don't just Sunday drive through the country. Pick a place to go. Set your GPS and try to get there. My personal debt is disappearing at a very quick rate. I'm not there yet. Probably still another maybe 18 months until I'm where I really want to be. But once I figured out that I was not going in the right direction, or at the very least not getting there fast enough, is when I had an attitude adjustment. And I also mentioned the pessimist to optimist thing. That largely happened when I realized I was the one in charge. You know, forget about the news headlines, forget about everything going wrong in the world. Most of that stuff doesn't influence us on a personal level. Most of it. Some of it does. It may affect you more than it affects me. Point being, most of that stuff doesn't matter to our own personal journeys. Now, we can stop and help people along the way, and we absolutely should. But to let the national and international politics of the day affect how we handle our day-to-day lives is where things get really off the rails. And again, that's where the pessimist in me switched to the optimist, is when I realized I got to take care of me first. I got to pay my bills. I got to worry about my retirement. Then whatever's left over, then let's focus on the external. Then let's get down to what, you know, some of this other stuff that we engage in social media and, you know, throw things at the TV or whatever it is. All that said, this has been a fun little drift down the stream of consciousness. I think this might be a new series, which is not that much different from the weekend philosophy mess, but if you can't tell, I'm in a different place than I was. I took a hiatus from YouTube. You've all heard about that. And this is kind of what it's like coming out of that cocoon. I have a new lease on life, and I may have a career switch coming in the near future. If it happens, great. If it doesn't, hey, what the hell? I tried. I didn't sit on the sidelines and whine about it like I was previously inclined to do. I actually threw my hat into the ring. So we will see how all that turns out. But hearkening back a year or so ago, or 6 months ago, no matter who you are or where you are, I hope you're having a great weekend. Take care, and we'll talk to you again soon. I am going to sit out here in the rain, sip on the rest of my Abalora. At least I have a nice wide-brimmed hat to keep, you know, most of me from getting soggy. And here comes more rain and a little bit of wind. We'll talk to you again soon. Take care.